And joining me now in our continuing series of new voices, primarily folks under the age of 30 who are jumping into the political either activist or idea space, however you want to look at it. I'm joined today by Cameron Kasky. He's somebody that he lived through the shooting in Parkland, Florida at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School back in 2018. So in some ways, he didn't seek activism. You could argue that activism found him in many ways. And so for some of you, he may be a familiar face to go back then, but he is doing more than and I'd say just in supporting and recounting and doing everything they can to sort of keep the issue of Parkland and of school shootings alive. But he has moved into some other spaces, may even consider elective office himself. And he joins me now. Cameron, it is good to meet you.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for calling me a new voice, because there's this thing that happens with Gen Z activists sometimes where I'll see some kid getting up and sharing their story, speaking their truth, advocating for something. And they'll come up to me and say, "You were the first person I saw doing this when I was a kid." And I'm like, hey, I'm still a kid. Okay. I'm 24 years old. My frontal cortex is not fully developed yet. Like, I'm still a young person too. We're both young at the same time. So
I find it, I don't know when I guess I'm a grandfather at this point, being in my mid 50s. So that is something, but that's the thing, right? I think that, you're of the generation that the idea of having the ability to speak out, the tools were in your hand already, right? When I was your age, I thought about running for office at 18. There was somebody, I grew up in Miami, there was somebody that did it in Hialeah and went door to door and got elected at 18. I thought, oh, well, that's doable and I could do that. But it was a little, I had no instant way to communicate with thousands of people so in some ways you had it in your hand, you knew to use it. And I think my guess is that's what that person was saying to you. Like, hey, wow, you immediately used it and now we're learning to use it. Perhaps
it's very interesting because the first human stories that were told after the Parkland shooting were the ones that we were telling people from inside. So we didn't even have to wait to walk out of school to share our experience with people. We were texting our experience to our parents. And every year on the anniversary of the shooting, I share screenshots of the messages that I send my parents on social media, the ones that don't have some cursing and some scary stuff in it. Yeah. I send some of the more tame messages, but people got this look into the experience that they weren't able to get during Sandy Hook when the people being executed were children. And they didn't really understand this experience after Las Vegas, because after the Las Vegas shooting, Vegas wasn't very much of a community. It was a lot of out-of-towners coming in for a concert. In Parkland, what you had was a community of people who all knew each other. It was a big high school. It's 3,000 kids. Right. But Parkland's not a very big town. We all knew each other. We were all familiar with each other. And there were just a couple of us afterwards who came out and said, okay, we know the cameras are coming to town. We were 17, let's say. That's how old I was. So we knew about Sandy Hook, of course. We knew about Aurora. I remember I was scared to go see the new Batman movie when that shooting happened, because I was scared someone else was going to come in and shoot up the screening that I was at. And
do you remember how old you were when Aurora happened?
I believe I was 12 years old.
Okay, so you were probably like looking forward to that movie, right? That would have been
I just as much as I would be today. Thank you very much. But we knew the mass shooting. It was not an alien concept to us. Columbine happened a year before I was born, and so we knew that the cameras were coming to town. The difference was we were of an age where we were just old enough to understand why this was happening. We were old enough to understand that this person who has this weapon, they were able to buy it somehow. Whoever is shooting our friends, and we were seeing videos of the shooting, they were getting sent to us while I was hiding in a classroom from a mass shooter. I was seeing on Snapchat people I knew getting shot dead. And it was surreal and quite terrifying. And but we knew what was going on. We were like, yep, we're in a mass shooting. That's what's happening right now. We're in another
Well,
school shooting. These
but
happen.
I don't think you appreciate the following, which is this is the first time those of us on the outside got this kind of coverage of it. We never had seen it like this.
Totally.
And I don't and I think it's going to Columbine was Columbine because it was the first. Parkland has its own status because of this, the fact that it's the first one that that people lived in real time and shared the real time experience.
And beyond
We'd
that,
hear
it's
about it
the
in the
first one where
aftermath, right?
it,
Columbine, you heard about the kids in the aftermath. This we saw it, and I think I think that's why we have so many mass shootings, but why does Parkland still stand out? And I think that's what it is.
I'm going to raise you one. I think it's also because this is one where the survivors came out and said what everybody knows, which is this is political.
Right.
Because that was the primary goal my classmates and I had when we came together and started March for Our Lives was we knew that the cameras were coming and that they wanted to film people cry and they wanted to, you know, watch how sad everything was and talk about what a sad white community this was where white people died and white moms are sad. But we went in front of the cameras and said, hey, these mass shootings that you're so terrified by, seems to be there's one gun that appears at almost every single one of them.
Yeah.
And the person who shot up our high school, who's 19 years old, was able to legally purchase that firearm, despite the fact that there had been dozens of reports filed with the police about his terrifying behavior in a state where gun laws were very, very loose and very weak and led to this type of shooting. So, sure, this was the first mass shooting where we got the on the ground experience with everybody, but it was also the first mass shooting like this, where the kids who were hiding under the desks came out of school and said, don't let them tell you this isn't political. This is as political as something could possibly be.
There's a reason results matter more than promises. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan has become America's largest injury law firm. For the last 35 years, they've recovered $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients. It includes cases where insurance companies offered next to nothing, short of shortchanging, seeing if they could get away with it. And Morgan & Morgan fought back, and they won millions. In Pennsylvania, one client was awarded $26 million. It was a staggering 40 times the amount that the insurance company originally offered. That offer, $650,000, whatever it took to sort of get away without paying. So with more than 1,000 lawyers across the country, Morgan & Morgan knows how to deliver for everyday people. So if you're injured, you're looking for a lawyer, check out forthepeople.com/Toddcast or dial pound law, pound 529 on your cell phone. And remember, all law firms are not the same. So give Morgan & Morgan a look. Their fee is free unless they win.
No, and I think that's what, look, I mean, I never thought I'd see Rick Scott sign any restriction at all on purchasing a weapon. Okay. And he did. Now I know you're following closely what's going on. There is a movement to roll back, get rid of these laws and to roll back the age from 21 to back to 18 again, where it would be legal to purchase these weapons. You said something very interesting at the beginning of our conversation. Hey, I'm 24. I'm not even fully formed, my front. And, Hertz won't let you rent a car, but you can go buy one of these weapons. Something else. Insurance companies have advised Hertz. Hertz didn't come up with this policy on their own, right? This was just based on data. And they decided, hey, it is better to do it at 25, and our insurance will cover us a certain way.
Well, there was
we know the same thing about weapons. We know what the data says.
There was a point at which Republicans, talking about things that we would call, let's say, common sense reforms, you could get certain Republicans to move on that. You got Republicans in 2018, feels like a lifetime ago, with COVID and with the fact that It's a pretty good portion of my time on this planet Earth. But for many, many adults, 2018 was not that long ago objectively. It just kind of feels that way.
No, COVID,
But
though, really screwed up the space-time
COVID screwed it up.
continuum for a lot of
Totally.
people. There's
But
no doubt.
in 2018, there were certain reforms that Republicans would say, this is a common sense gun reform, saying that somebody who had gotten in trouble for domestic abuse should not be able to immediately purchase a firearm because of how many firearm victims are women getting shot by their husbands. That was common sense. And that was something where you could get certain Republicans to move. But it's a different game now. Like all the rules just kind of went out the window. And that's this very dark and unfortunate conversation I have to have with people who are trying to advocate for gun safety right now. I have to tell them, listen, you're playing a different game than I was when I was 17. When I was 17, they rolled out the red carpet for me and my classmates to talk about this.
Look,
the whole country,
whatever your views are on Donald Trump back then, he wanted to be on the right side of you guys, right? He may not have been there on policy, but he wanted to be empathetic in the moment. You're absolutely right. Whatever, again, I say this, in the moment, right? He didn't act, but he wanted, and that is, you wouldn't even get that kind of reception this time, would you?
You don't even get virtue signaling now. You get, how are we going to find some sort of minority to attach to this mass shooting? Every time there's a mass shooting now,
right, they look for a connection to the shooter again. Yeah.
Says, which group of marginalized people can we directly attribute this shooting to, even if it's in the situations where it is somebody who is some sort of minority. In the situations where it's not, it is the person who is almost every single mass shooter in history, which is a white male, normally around my age. No matter what the circumstance is, MAGA world doesn't even virtue signal, oh, gee, this is bad, we're sorry anymore. Yeah. Now it's just, okay, how can we use this as an opportunity to attack one of the groups that's on the map of people we're looking to hit?
Right. No, I mean, look, we saw what happened in Minneapolis. Before I get to Minneapolis, before we get to it as sort of an issue, tell me what goes through your head when you hear breaking news. There's a school shooting in insert town, but the most recent one was Minneapolis. What happens to you? Tell me about your feelings in that moment when you see it.
It's one of those feelings you get where you process the tragedy of the inevitability before you process the actual tragedy. Excuse me if that's a little complicated, but like the first feeling I have is, well, isn't it so terrible that I knew this was going to happen? Every time I hear about a mass shooting, and I normally hear about them at this point, by the way, with a news channel calling me to come on and talk about it. Like that's my number one way to find out about mass shootings these days is the phone is ringing. Oh, it looks like it might be a news studio. There might be a mass shooting that they want me to
Cameron, I lived this life for 15 years where I do these breaking news alerts, and I go through, literally have the same FBI profile experts, and I'd have, and you go through, and you're now experiencing it because you're now seen as an expert, right? Because you can provide, well, what could be going through the minds, and it's just sitting there, and it's when it became formulaic that, we used to at least obsess over these things for 3 days, 4 days, maybe a week. Do we make it a full news cycle before it's all gone?
That was the first thing I said after the shooting in Minnesota. I was talking about it on television a couple times, and every time I went on, I was like, hey, there was just a political assassination in Minnesota where 2 people were shot dead. More people were shot, but 2 people were shot dead in their house by somebody impersonating a police officer in a politically motivated assassination, and Donald Trump did not go to the funeral. And this is just in the same state, in Minnesota, very recently. You don't even remember that, folks. Not you as in you, Chuck.
No, I know what you mean.
The proverbial you don't even remember that, folks.
Cameron, we haven't had, I can't believe the lack of interest from Congress. It's not even, we're just over a year since Donald Trump was almost assassinated. And we've never had how did this happen? Congress hasn't done the oversight investigation. There are historical names for previous the Warren Commission with Kennedy, and Gerald Ford and Reagan had assassination attempts, and there'd be congressional inquiries to find out, what did Secret Service do right, what did they do wrong, what should we have done differently. And there's been some Inspector General reports, but the lack of, frankly, interest into how Butler happened. And again, as you point out, the Butler assassin looks a lot like a lot of these shooters, under the age of 30. A young man, seems to be, showing some warning signs of some other issues. And here we are. So, and yet there's almost no interest. And you can't, I'll tell you where I go. I don't want to put thoughts in your head. I go to that Republicans don't want to deal with the access to weapons issue. And the more that they look into it, the more they realize the only preventative that might have some impact is to limit access to weapons. And that's not something they're politically ready to confront.
And Democrats see it as a losing issue. People
right.
don't
so they've given up on it. Yeah.
In 2019, when there were so many Democrats running for the primary that there had to be 2 different debates, Beto O'Rourke and Eric Swalwell were practically running for president on gun reform. Yeah. That was the thing they talked about the most.
They wanted your endorsement.
And
it almost felt that, right? It felt like they were
to them about it plenty.
Yeah.
That was back when gun control. But the Democratic Party, it's not really something that comes up very much anymore. Like, if you talk to your average person and ask them, what have you heard the Democratic Party talking about? Well, first of all, I think that transcends gun control as a problem across the board, where I don't think anybody knows what the Democratic Party is saying. But generally speaking, I think Democrats said, you know what? The gun lobby, it's not just the NRA. There's many groups that are very, very influential. Their stranglehold on the American political system is so tight. Yeah. I mean, weapons are one of the only things America even manufactures at this point. Like, their power is so deep that we're not even going to bother, because it's considered a leftist, far left, liberal Looney Tune thing to say that if there is a product that is proven not to be safe for consumer use, it should be removed from the market. That's what this is. When a toy hurts children, when children poke their eye out with a toy, there are a lot of systems in place to make sure that toy isn't on the shelves anymore. Well, these toys, and this is how people see them, as cool things to own because it looks cool and it's fun. That I know gun owners, that's how they feel about it. The toy is dangerous and it needs to be removed from the shelves. And the thing is, the narrative that this is the last thing in between us and authoritarianism is over. Donald Trump has sent the military into the streets. Donald Trump is sending masked goons with no identification, no respect for any sort of due process, to go take grandmas and throw them on airplanes to some country they've never been to before in their entire life. We are at the point of where the NRA told their fairy tale that the good guy with the gun was going to stand up against authoritarianism. And guess what? The good guys with the gun are cheering it on.
What do you make of the NRA? But the only way it took the NRA to stand up for transgender individuals was to hear a threat to their ability to own a gun.
I think that should be assigned to the Democratic Party, as the Democratic Party asks itself, are trans rights a losing issue? You see a lot of Dems doing this. They say, oh, wokeness is over. Kamala lost. Maybe we should start throwing trans people under the bus. Maybe that's why we're losing. And Democrats should say, do I want to be to the right of the NRA on trans people?
It's an interesting, I've heard a few other people make a very similar point. Look, I know the way the NRA thinks, right? This is, they're going to fight any restriction on anything because they know that they believe in the slippery slope argument, which right now the slippery slope on the democracy should be something we should all be a little bit more focused on. But let me pivot to something, because you sort of alluded to it, but you're more than just an activist on the issue of guns. You are wanting to sort of influence politics greater beyond just that issue. And I guess my guess is, in some ways, because you've hit a brick wall on this issue, it's sort of like, okay, this problem is bigger We need massive change. Have you given up on the Democratic Party as a vehicle for that change? And if not, why not?
I think the Democratic Party needs to clean house. I think
What does that look like, though? I mean, I hear that. I don't do, sometimes you say that. I think the Washington Nationals need to clean house. I think the Miami Dolphins need to clean house, right?
And
in a
both of
sports
those
franchise,
both of those
right,
statements are completely true as well, by the way.
right. This, and it's funny how a party, we all can see it when it's a sports team, and you're like, oh boy, that's a mess. Clean house, right? It's never a problem. We sometimes struggle to view it through that prism when we see it happen with a political party.
Well, I will say, first of all, I'm quite happy with the Nationals right now after what they did to the Cubs last night. That made me very happy. So
Fair enough.
Washington Nationals stand the way they are. I also think in regards to the Dolphins, the fact that Tua the quarterback was appointed to one of Trump's committees after getting his brains melted into goo by diving directly into a defensive player's chest is very interesting. Democrats cleaning house, what that means is that the voting base that has powered this party for a very, very long time is sending it a message that corporate interests, lobbies that operate solely in the interest of right-wing nationalist foreign governments, militaries, we don't want that anymore. So when Hakeem Jeffries pees his pants in front of everybody about Zohran Mamdani winning a landslide victory in New York City, Democratic voters say, hey, right now we're seeing a Democrat win and the party can't even get behind it. That's embarrassing, right? The center right and the far right, they're voting on all the same stuff together. Like, yeah, Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, and MTG will break off from the group here and there. Okay. But generally speaking, the moderate conservatives and the far right conservatives are one unit and they operate like one unit. Meanwhile, the moderates and the progressives are too busy fighting each other to fight authoritarianism. And it's embarrassing. In the face of authoritarianism, the Democratic Party is pointing fingers at each other. And I think I think that will have consequences for generations. Right now, I want to see
it's interesting you say that.
I don't care.
Yeah, no. I want to dig into this because I don't disagree with that. Now we may disagree on where should everybody compromise and what should be the focus. But what I think Mamdani's gotten right is he took the advice that many of the centrist Democratic strategists have said, which is, hey, stop focusing on some of the cultural issues, just focus on on people's lives. Guess what Mamdani did? He focused on issues that impact their everyday lives, right? The cost of living, pure and simple. He ran on exactly that issue and it worked. And to me, more Democrats need to see, hey, that worked. You may not like the branding of socialism. And I understand coming from South Florida, that's a tough word to rebrand. But that doesn't mean he didn't tack correctly when it came to, hey, he didn't run on anything having to do with how we should say certain words. He simply ran on grocery prices and housing.
I was talking to the twice elected DNC Vice Chair Malcolm Kangata about this on my podcast with Tim Miller this week. People like to talk about what the Democrats are saying, what woke words are being used to say what. I like to talk about what the Democrats are not saying. I like to talk about the fact that Democrats could be going to Americans right now and saying, hey, you're getting screwed over by a class of oligarchs who are using the White House for giant multi-billion-dollar crypto schemes, who are trying to promote techno-feudalism. Here's what that is. We'll get to explain it. Like, the messaging error that the Democrats are facing right now is it seems like a lot of them don't want to tell people that extremely rich people pulling the strings behind the scenes right now are screwing you over.
Well, isn't that because they're too reliant?
Are donating to these people's campaigns.
Yeah, I was just going to say the party, I watched this crypto detente on the left, right? And you and I know, and many of them, I'm going to be really cynical here. It's amazing. I see some people suddenly become pro crypto and I went, oh, you're on the board of insert new crypto company here. And, because the crypto industry is just desperate for the illusion of bipartisanship. So they'll just buy people off. And it is And so you're right. I do think the leaders of the party get worried about quote unquote alienating rich people, alienating their donors when this is what you're advocating is what James Carville originally became rich doing, which is running on class warfare. You run on class, not on identity. And when the Democrats think class, hey, middle class, working class, those people are screwing you, right? That's what Barack Obama, how he classified Mitt Romney as one of them. He ran on class, not identity. And a whole bunch of Democrats in the mid-teens decided that, Obama won because of identity politics, not on sort of economic class issues. And they were wrong. They didn't watch the campaign I watched in 2012.
Well, can I just say, first of all, thank you for comparing me to James Carville. I've never gotten that one before because I don't sound like Foghorn.
But this is where Carville does get it, right? Which is, look, you're going to have to, that's the unifying message. People just want to have more power themselves to affect their own lives. Hard stop. And there's no reason why that messaging can't appeal to a center-right person who's trying to make ends meet and a center-left person or a progressive or somebody who may not look like the person that lives in Rolla, Missouri, but they actually have the same problems.
Well, it's
looking for affordable housing.
People are tying their shoelaces together about the whole woke language thing. And I'm like, I don't care how you're saying it. I care what you're saying. People aren't going to be alienated by you using socially positive language if you're telling them the truth, which is that they're getting screwed over by oligarchs. Like, the United States right now is so unbelievably impacted by literally just Peter Thiel. And the Democrats have the opportunity to say, hey, there's this guy who does all the things that the anti-Semites say the Jews do, the string pulling and scheming behind the scenes, infusing blood into himself so he can look. Yeah, there is the actual worst guy ever got to plant his own VP. And he's working with the Project 2025 people. What's more evil than Project 2025? And it was talked about in the 24 election. I don't want to act like it wasn't, but the Republican Party is giving the Democrats a list of things to run on, almost on like a silver platter. And it seems
Cameron,
like the Democrats want to turn it down every time.
And I've been waiting for somebody to put this in an ad. I want to say it's something like 10 of the 20 most expensive home sales in DC have gone to some sort of corporate entity, whether it's Mark Zuckerberg buying a compound in DC, Peter Thiel. It is astonishing. The super rich have decided, Jeff Bezos, and you're like, why have they all decided to buy property in Washington, DC all of a sudden?
And I personally think the Democratic Party is acting like it has so few options right now on where it can win people over. And to me, I'm saying there is a preponderance of options. Like, what if you ran a political campaign talking about things like BlackRock and just explained BlackRock to Americans and said, hey, do you think that BlackRock should be in a bidding war against a single mother for a starter home? Like, do you think that's okay? Do you think that's a financial system?
I do think explaining how the system, right? I do think, the shorthand on oligarchs, it's the well-informed consumer that understands where that's coming from. You do need to make it accessible for people that don't follow this every day. And I think that is that is the challenge.
It is the challenge, but it all boils down to some relatively simple concepts, which are there's a very small amount of people on top, and they're using a very large amount of money to control a very large amount of people who, if we had all come together and stopped fighting each other over race and over social issues, we would be able to stop them from having this much power. But it's the people who are driving all of the division in this country. It all goes back to this same class of people who are the upper class, and they want us all to be racist. They want us all to hate each other for our beliefs, hate each other for our places of worship and everything like that. And the Democrats could be the party that said, hey, poor working class people, let's put aside our differences and see how few people there are on top that are driving all this division. But instead, the Democrats are like, No, I'm not gonna say no weapons to Israel, because that raises a very interesting question about. That's my Pete Buttigieg impersonation, by the way. The Democrats are choosing, in my opinion, the easiest places to be popular and turning them away.
Let me ask this: when you basically got, like I said, you didn't choose political activism; you were sort of thrust into it by circumstance, and you've chosen that as your path to try to get some. I'm not going to put words, whatever you're trying to get out of this. But when you were thrust into it in 2018, there was a fairly healthy Florida Democratic Party. Two close elections. 2020, it was a fairly close presidential election. How did the Democratic Party collapse between what you saw in 2018 and this shell of what I think was a shell already of itself, but a shell now of a shell of itself in 2025?
I am not a Florida expert, but from what I've seen, I think that the Democratic Party gave up and they stopped fighting for Florida. I think that they stopped bothering, and they took a lot of resources that could have been spent fighting for Florida and just kind of gave up. There's a huge issue that the Democratic Party faces with Spanish speakers.
Yeah.
They don't know how to send people out messaging in Spanish. They don't know how to get into those communities. And the Republican Party is extremely good at reaching Hispanic communities, and they're extremely good at turning different Hispanic groups against each other and saying, no, Trump's going to do the deportations, but he's going to deport these guys. You guys are going to be okay.
Oh, I know. Look, there's actually a real opportunity with the Venezuelan community right now in South Florida who were lied to, and the Cuban community down there who was lied to, because he's pulled all these temporary protected statuses.
And the Democratic Party that I know is probably going to see that and go, but I hope they don't. I hope that they fight that fight. But there's, I think that this kind of speaks to what I've been speaking about since we got into the party itself, which is it's the truth with minorities. It's the truth with Gen Z. I think the Democratic Party feels entitled to a lot of votes. And because, of course, these people would vote for us, they don't bother to go in and bargain.
A little bit of arrogance,
and meet them where they're at, and say, like, Trump is a virulent racist against Hispanic people. Trump has repeatedly dehumanized them and used language that is so destructive and harmful, calling them rapists, saying they're bringing in drugs. He's so terrible. So of course the Latinos are going to vote for us. Are you kidding me? Like, why would they not? And then the party doesn't bother following up, going into these communities, like uplifting people within these communities to spread this message. Instead, they just feel like they deserve it. And I think that that's a huge reason the party lost Gen Z, or at least Gen Z men specifically. Gen Z women did show up this election. It's Gen Z men that were the problem. Yeah. I think they just assumed that, the younger generations keep getting more progressive. March for Our Lives happened. Gen Z, they're standing up for the Democrats and everything. Meanwhile, the younger half of Gen Z was getting radicalized on TikTok during COVID, when they were sitting and looking on their phone all day, and the social media algorithms that poison our brains were sending them Andrew Tate and Jake Paul and Joe Rogan and all these terrible things. So the party didn't do any substantive outreach to young people, and then young men showed up for Trump, and the party was like, how could this have possibly happened? Well, it happened because you guys weren't trying. Harris and Walz didn't even go to colleges, by the way.
Trump did try. He showed up on all these podcasts. He got in. He showed up everywhere. Let me get you out of here on this.
Imagine being Harris and Walz and not going to college campuses. Right. They didn't go to college campus because they were afraid of getting protested about Gaza.
Yeah. It's astonishing when you say it like that. It really is. Let me get you out of here on this. I'm sure you had strong opinions about what happened to David Hogg at the DNC and the whole mess at the vice chair. And I know you just interviewed Malcolm Kenyatta, who got sort of thrown into that. And I think he had his own mixed feelings about how all that went out. the DNC as an entity right now, how much trust do you have in them?
I think people just don't know what the DNC is for. I think people assume that the DNC just is the Democrats and it's not there to facilitate and operate the party from within. And one of the things that we were talking about with Malcolm was like Hakeem Jeffries and is not endorsing the mayoral candidate in New York City. And Cory Booker said that, oh, he doesn't like to get involved with New York City politics. Meanwhile, he endorsed Mike Bloomberg when Mike Bloomberg was an independent. Like, the DNC doesn't choose the nominees. The DNC supports the nominees. And your job within the DNC is to manage the party and manage how it operates and let there be some sort of system of support so the party itself can actually have any real DNA. And I think that when I'm asked if you ask me if I trust the DNC right now, I would say I'm not particularly concerned with the DNC right now. I'm concerned with who's running for what and what they're running on, because I don't think that there is a strong Democratic Party. If somebody asked me, what does it mean to be a Democrat right now? I don't know what the answer would be. Like,
I don't know what the party is other than opposing Trump. It opposes Trump, but other than that, I don't know what that means.
And but if I tell somebody who's not in politics, who doesn't read about this every day, if I tell somebody that the Democrats are the party that's opposing Trump, how am I supposed to tell them we're doing it? I could talk to you about government shutdowns. I could talk to you about, which state Supreme Courts were able to do what, but to a normal person. And this is what is so important for us to remember is that, like, when you're talking to Democrats, you're talking to Republicans, you have to remember how very many people aren't looking into this at all.
Yeah. If
I were telling a non-voter, which is the most important group of people to reach ever, by the way, to vote for Democrats, and they said, what is a Democrat right now? What does that mean? I couldn't even convince them that it's the opposition to Trump because the party is not doing anything to substantively oppose authoritarianism. And the party is confirming people he's putting up left and right. Like, I don't know what to say because the party can't even agree on itself. They can't endorse their own candidate. It's a mess. So I'm not really concerned with the DNC because I'm taking it one election at a time.
Cameron, you've got a lot of interesting thoughts on this. I see why your voice is expanding and frankly should. It definitely, we know there needs to be revitalization. It certainly seems like the current people that hold leadership positions, I'm not calling them leaders of the party. I would just say this. My question for Hakeem Jeffries would be, where were you when Andrew Cuomo announced for mayor and you knew that was a disaster, but you said nothing?
Carville for mayor, 2025.
He would at least run on the right issues.
And he would campaign. He would show up and campaign. Everybody, Carville, oh, I think it is too late. Never mind. Okay, next time.
Carville, well, I don't know. I'm not sure 80-year-olds. I think he would agree. Not sure 80-year-olds should be allowed.
Can I make one more point if you don't mind?
Yeah.
I'm sick of people acting like young means progressive. Okay. I see a lot of young candidates who are announcing their runs for office and they're talking about how they're young and they're the next chapter.
Well, what matters to you more, youth or progressive politics?
I care about who is meeting the moment in what way.
And you don't care if they're 80 or 8.
Right now, the most popular progressive in the United States is Bernie Sanders. And Bernie Sanders is, last time I checked, 1,000 years old.
Right.
But people like what he's doing because they like where he's at on the issues. If you're young and you're running for office, spare me the whole I'm young shtick. It doesn't matter your age if you're not showing up and doing the work.
My theory on Bernie is that there are people that will never vote for him that like him only because they think he doesn't bullshit. And I think that's the lesson people need to take away from Bernie more than anything else. Bernie's politics, if you ask people specifically, well, he holds this position, they like Bernie sometimes better than they like the whole meal better than they like each little ingredient to Bernie, which to me should be a lesson people should take away, which is be honest and straightforward and speak American, because that's what Bernie does. And that's what I think why you see this wide swath of people have a net positive rating of him, even if he's more popular than some of the ideas he's pushing.
Be real, everybody. Be real like Bernie and James and your friends Chuck and Cam.
Cam, it's great. I'll tell you, the one thing that's making me happy is University of Miami football. I don't know if you got the bug while being a South Floridian down there, but you know how important college football is to Florida.
Well, I know that the Gators just had a terrible loss, so congratulations on that.
Well, I'm sure you have lots of friends at UF, and so
I've got friends at all the Florida schools.
Exactly, and there's always these crazy rivalries. Anyway, good luck, and I enjoy watching you with my friend Mr. Miller.
Thank you.